Good afternoon and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 18 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission programs. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss critical issues facing government and industry leaders with their secure cloud computing strategies and solutions. With me on today's show are Renata Spinks, C4I Assistant Director of IT, Deputy CIO, and Senior Information Security Officer at the U.S. Marine Corps. Paula Wagner, Director, Cloud Program Management Office, Department of State. Kendall Krebs, Deputy Executive Director, Infrastructure Operations, Department of Veterans Affairs. Joe Sangiuliano, Regional Vice President, Prisma Cloud Palo Alto Networks. John Martin, Manager, Technical Solutions Specialist at NetApp. And Ben Cushing, Chief Architect, Health and Life Sciences at Red Hat. Well, 2 decades ago, we had 25-point plan that had a data center consolidation in it, and then we did cloud first, and then we did cloud smart. Now we're just doing good, secure cloud computing, and we're way up the value chain. Renata, we're going to start with you. We know that the Marine Corps always has to be ready, and you keep them ready, and I'm sure this technology is ready. So tell us about what you're doing there in the state of the state. I know I hear about strategy, et cetera. I know you've been doing a lot of implementation over there. What's happening at the Marine Corps?
I think what's most important about what we are doing is probably, for me, what are we not doing? There's so much in the secure cloud space that you have to consider, whether that's migration, whether that's assessing to even, determine if our cloud applications can function in the cloud, or is there some type of refactoring or even collaborative space where we have to reach across the aisle to our other sister agencies and say, hey, this human resource system we've been using for 15 to 20 years, do you have a system that not only does what we need it to do, but it also provides us with, maybe contracts management. So those assessments are happening. And critical to everything that we're doing when you're thinking about the assessments and the strategy, adopting zero trust, looking at your workforce. We're looking at artificial intelligence and machine learning and trying to figure out how are we going to be able to take advantage of something that has evolved into, ChatGPT is what you're hearing about right now. But there are other models that our sister agencies and our partners in industry are looking at from a generative perspective. And so we're looking at how do we use that system and that technology to close kill webs? How do we use it for a war fighting function? The operational functions are great and it's definitely valuable there, but we're pushing out to the edge. And in order to do all of that, you have to have a secure computing architecture. And that architecture is not only just based on zero trust, but you can't forget about defense in depth, because when you combine both of those two, now you have a resilient-based model for security. And then the last piece is our governance. You talked about strategy and our policies. We're looking at how we're going to govern all this. We're looking at, how is our authority to operate process going to be effective from a risk management perspective? We are managing someone else's infrastructure. Most of the things we're working on now is not sitting, at Quantico in our data center per se. And so understanding how we're governing and how we are managing our data is a critical piece as well. So we're looking at multiple pieces of the secure cloud architecture, not just diving right in and implementing, but we're trying to go left of bang as well and make sure that as we look at force design, software modernization, those challenges and complexities that we're all on the call today going to talk a little bit about, we're all finding ways to get those lessons learned, but implement and then continuously innovate.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts going on over there at the Marine Corps, and super impressed on all the things that you're doing. Paula, you've been over at the State Department for a few months now. Congratulations on your new appointment, by the way. And very global environment there. Over a couple of 100 plus consulates and embassies out there, a lot of different activities. I know you all are on a journey moving out of sort of those legacy data centers into these new environments. Tell us about the state of the state at state. I couldn't wait to say that, by the way.
Yes. Well, hi, Luke. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So for State Department, we are really trying hard to continue to establish our multi-cloud state enterprise product portfolio that accelerates solution delivery. So we have AWS, we have Azure, we have Google. And then in order to kind of really secure our clouds and working with our partners at Diplomatic Security, we implement Okta, and we really try to establish a vendor agnostic platform for anybody to use across the department. And we really try to ensure that we have easy access for all of our partners and our customers. So we have centralized procurement vehicles. We have a consolidated door to entry, which is essentially our customer engagement group. We have great governance around onboarding and migrating from legacy data centers or just legacy apps that are sitting under people's desks in the middle of Ukraine or something. And so we really try to offer a fully integrated ID management access. We're also working with our partners and shared responsibilities for security and compliance. So we really try to help our customers with ATO processes. So we try to establish common controls so that we can make it more efficient and faster for our customers to implement new applications on our cloud. So they only have to worry about, certain controls, and then we take care of the rest for them. And then we can continuous monitoring and logging for them. And then just kind of overall looking over their applications to say, hey, I think one of your developers wrote a script that's now on a loop and it's causing some of your cloud costs to increase. So you might want to talk to your developer to kind of fix that script, which, our customers appreciate. So I think for us, we're really trying to expand our presence overseas and really looking at ways to support, our embassies that have great connection, but then our embassies that don't have great connection and how we can better support them.
A lot of primitive environments out there, no question. I love the idea of, providing these enterprise services and sort of lay them down there and then get out of the way and let these customers, as you like to call them, do what they do best. I think that's awesome. So appreciate that. Kendall, how about at Veterans Affairs? You've got a mighty footprint out there across the continental U.S. and probably beyond that. Tell us about where you are on your journey.
Yeah, the VA is a huge organization. I think we rank as something like a Fortune 10 organization, something close to 1,400 points of healthcare, lots of benefits offices, 155 veteran cemeteries. So the footprint's big, the mission is broad. But when it comes to cloud security, I like something you said at the start, Luke, kind of the ability for us to start moving up the stack right now. So our team at VA has done a fantastic job showing the art of the possible with the cloud environments. And today we are a multi-cloud hybrid environment. That's our new infrastructure footprint. And we moved about 300 of our major applications to the cloud. I think along that journey, like many organizations, we've seen the importance of focusing on lift and optimize rather than just lift and shift, really using that moment of movement as a catalyst for change, where we're building something new, focusing on our cloud native builds. But along that journey, one of the things we've seen as an infrastructure team is that our application teams, we're trying to figure out how to do it right. And we needed to show up as better partners, assisting. And Paula just hit something key there for me as well. And it's that enterprise strategy on how we're enabling that and how we're showing up as partners to help them along. So taking inspiration from some other federal agencies, including DoD, we launched VA Platform One, which helps our application teams move towards containerized environments and more modern hosting solutions. And part of that from a security standpoint is really important to me. Containers provide some potential benefits to the application teams. I think both Renata and Paula spoke a little bit about the ATO processes. So important, right? So with our VA Platform One solution, we can help with inherited controls around those pre-hardened containerized environments. But there are also risks with containerized environments, right? We need to think about how we're managing the container registry, the image registry, right? How we're maintaining up-to-date images and scanning those images. And by doing that at the enterprise level, we've really got a team focused on thinking through those challenges so that we can bring those solutions to our application partners and they're not stuck figuring that out on their own.
Super important dimension there when you start talking about containerization, very popular sort of solution set there. Not the panacea, but certainly a way to do everything from a lift and shift to an organic build, which I think is fantastic too. So appreciate the update on the journey, Joe. We can't do this without great technology, and we really do appreciate everything that Palo Alto has done to help enable these capabilities. You have a perspective, you're seeing it from across the multi-agency. Give us an update on what you're seeing there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Luke. Really good to hear from the panelists as well, because what we're learning in this move to multi-cloud, not just the lift and shift, but the move to multi-cloud, and specifically the dynamic challenges with security as our agencies are moving to cloud native application development is creating a whole litany of new vulnerabilities, attack matrix, things that we have to be very cognizant of. And that's challenging, especially when you figure in the multiple different tool sets that are offered from the CSPs on that shared responsibility model. Because it really, when you move to cloud, it's not just only what the cloud providers are providing, but there is a whole list of responsibilities that our agencies have to consider, the same way they would have to consider on-prem. And what that's caused is opened up a whole can of point products and an untenable management scenario of looking at how do we secure from code development all the way through cloud. And we see this being a huge challenge and an ever developing market that has started with cloud security posture management tools and is moving into further left right into, as I heard previously, how do we secure containers? How do we secure when we're moving? And again, containers are really a factor in which you take advantage of cloud native application development. And as you move further along from lifting and shifting into that application development cycle. So that, again, with security and the tool sets that are prevalent there are causing a whole bunch of challenge to manage and then look at your overall security posture holistically. So what we're noticing is this shift into platforms. We're noticing a shift of moving away from point products and tool sets into this shared responsibility with the CSPs, with our customers, and with the technology vendors to provide a holistic security from the build perspective, not just in runtime. And runtime, what we have there is mostly we're just being reactionary. So we need to get ahead of security, and that's where we're going today. And that's where we see our customers responding is how do we get away from alert fatigue? How do we really understand what we have in the cloud today? And again, I can't emphasize enough the litany of tool sets that are out there today can be confusing and challenging. And I see a trend with secure cloud computing moving towards holistic platform support starting early and really helping our customers in a partnership provide better holistic security.
Yeah, no question. Out at RSA, a lot of discussion about tool fatigue, if you will, and a lot of CISOs describing that. And now that we're getting into a multi-cloud environment, even more complexity being introduced into the environment. John, how about at NetApp? Once again, appreciate the involvement in enabling these capabilities across the ecosystem. You're seeing it from a certain dimension there. Tell us what you're seeing.
Luke, thank you for having us this afternoon. NetApp has a number of use cases where we're working with our public sector agencies on their most critical assets, the data. NetApp is the only data management and storage provider that offers the same data storage operating system in all of the hyperscalers. So AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they run the same operating systems that our clients run on-prem. What that enables is the ability to be able to seamlessly move workloads and data from their on-prem data centers to those cloud data centers. They're actually leveraging that to extend their data centers from on-prem into those cloud environments for common workloads like backup, disaster recovery, right? So instead of having to build out new data centers or extend the data centers that they already have for those common workloads, those common applications, we're helping them to seamlessly extend their data centers out to those areas. Other areas that we're seeing use cases is the actual bursting of workloads from on-prem into cloud in, again, a secure environment. The final reference I like to make is enterprise and mission critical applications. We work with a number of our clients that look to run mission critical applications around Oracle, SAP in native cloud resources, native cloud services, and have found that those native services didn't necessarily offer the performance and the enterprise capabilities, the protection, the data security. We were able to work with those clients and help them port to tier one first-party services in those same hyperscalers to not only offer the performance and the levels of security and data protection that they're used to working with on-prem. Not only were those very successful, those same agencies were able to port more mission critical applications and mission critical workloads into those cloud environments in a secure way.
Really
those are some of the use
appreciate
cases that we're seeing, Luke.
and really appreciate that and love the fact that we're no longer talking about pliers and wires here in cloud computing. We are talking up the value chain, which is very refreshing. We're going to take a small break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about secure cloud computing strategies. Ben, I'm going to throw it over to you at Red Hat. Once upon a time, you all were focused in a certain technology domain, OpenShift, et cetera. Way wider, way bigger than that these days. Tell us about where Red Hat is and what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, so first off, we have the benefit of being embedded in just about every IT system on the planet, some level. You peel back any proprietary system, even you'll find open source code that's been dropped in there from some.
It's a very impressive statement, by the way.
But it's usually from some community, upstream community that we foster. I mean, we've got something like 1 million open source projects that are generally being fostered, and only a handful of those actually turn into things that we support. So we're always at the cutting edge of the open source world. And again, it gives us this very broad perspective on how the internet is really being built. And that brings me back to a thought I kept having as you guys were speaking. I think we've kind of added a little bit of mystery to cloud. Right? In the past, we had data centers, they were yours. Cloud is somebody else's data center. Multi-cloud is lots of people's data centers. And hybrid cloud is everyone's data center plus yours. And So it's just layers of complexity when it comes
I've never
to
heard
security.
it framed that way, but that's a very interesting way of putting it.
I mean, it's really what it is, right?
It is.
And so when you get into the security space, it's about extending controls across all of those environments and having consistency of control. And I think that's ultimately what everyone's trying to drive towards, because your constituents, your customers, your mission all align to seeing those things be secured. And there's also a tremendous amount of or need for portability in all that too. Kendall hit on it with Vapo. So like one of the advantages there is he can move workloads across any one of the clouds, on-prem, whatever, without like that much resistance, because he's already sort of moved into like a modern cloud architecture. The DISA has done the same thing. CMS has done the same thing. They have these offerings where they're able to take advantage of all the different cloud vendors and their capital investments in their local data center. And I think that's really, if you start to, when you think about modernization, that's the space you want to get to. And then my last thought is, there's this movement of from here up to the cloud. And honestly, what I'm seeing now is a lot of coming back down. And so it's this acknowledgement, and John hit on this too, from NetApp, that there's this acknowledgement that we want to use everybody's data centers because that's how we scale. And then there's also the reality that you need to use what you already have too. And then you also need to be in environments that might be far away from you and in disadvantaged networks, right? So in the case of Marine Corps, you have four deployed forces, and you want to bring cloud computing to them, right? And so how do you extend what you can do in the cloud with the same security controls all the way to the edge? And like the finest example I can provide of this is we have a bacteria synthesizer on the International Space Station. Okay, and that's actually running on an OpenShift cluster, which is the same architecture that Kendall's using for his like enterprise, is running on a tiny little machine on the International Space Station doing bacteria synthesis. And the consistency between the ground-based system and that edge node is exactly the same. The security controls are exactly the same. And so we're getting to this world where you can extend those controls out to the edge. And I think that's really, we're coming into the edge computing in full steam at this point, and we're going to see a whole lot more.
Absolutely, and that's a great example of that, the very far edge. Kendall, I'm going to go up to you and ask about a specific program. So many important things that you all are doing for the veterans using this technology, and we'd love to get an example of one program that you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, so I think cloud computing has really allowed our infrastructure teams to show the kind of agility we might think about from the development side of the house. Ben was just hitting some of that, the answers that we can bring as an infrastructure team to solve problems. So, during the pandemic, our virtual desktops team's ability to rapidly scale to need based on the demand that was being created by everyone going home, right? We all know about that use case, but those were infrastructure teams that were figuring out those solutions with the power of cloud computing. But that continues today. VA has a tremendous research presence, and several of the infrastructure teams have really leaned in to help the research community meet the demands that they have with different programs inside the VA. And that's allowing our team to say yes and show up as partners to solve real problems. So it's really that agility that it brings to the infrastructure side of the fence that, when we were working solely in an on-prem environment before this hybrid state today, it could be time consuming and hard to say yes to some of those demands, especially if they had huge compute or storage requirements, like the research community does. But cloud really helps us enable those programs and show up as the partners we want to be.
Right. And you can say yes, but it might be 9+ months later versus perhaps 9 days at this point,
Right,
which is
right.
fantastic.
Faster.
Big difference there. Joe, how about at Palo Alto Networks? Would you like to just give an example of a program that you'd like to highlight that Palo Alto has been working on in regards to cloud computing and enabling said agencies?
Yeah, there's Palo Alto. Thank you, Luke. I appreciate that. So with at Palo Alto, if you look at the history specifically around where we've developed a lot of our customer interest and customer adoption had started on-prem with what we're doing with cloud workload protection, specifically when I'm talking about cloud workloads and cloud security. Not talking about access, not talking about SASE. We huge portfolio there, but it started with more of a hybrid on-prem type of a capability. Now that's migrated into full multi-cloud capability, and with many customers now that we're working on as they're working through their cloud journey and adopting, again, cloud native technologies and cloud native development. We are working with customers on this shift left conversation, which is, again, embedding security early on in the process, in the code process. So many customers are looking at that, especially as we're moving through FedRAMP moderate. We have that, and now we're on to FedRAMP ready. FedRAMP high ready, excuse me. So we're working with customers further from a SaaS delivered perspective now, not just on-prem, but full hybrid and multi-cloud capability to offer full security. And now we're getting into conversations and concepts like secrets management, infrastructure as code, which again is just providing better security early on. And there's a litany of, again, multiple different civilian agencies that we're working on with that today. And it's just evident because, again, with there's alert fatigue happening. There's too many tool sets, and customers are listening to this concept called CNAPP. Gartner just is talking about it now. It's fairly new, which is Cloud Native Application Protection Platform, which is really, again, putting together these multiple different tool sets that customers have been using, and they've been using with different point products. And again, like when we were out at RSA, it's overwhelming. There's an overwhelming amount of companies and tool sets that are out there. We believe this convergence is happening. We believe that a platform approach is much better. Our customers are starting to respond to that, happening a lot in the civilian space without naming names, but there's multiple customers that we're working with today on that space.
Sure. Simplifying, I think, very important. Renata, how about at the Marine Corps? You've got a lot of hats you're holding there. But give an example of one area you'd like to highlight.
Sure. Probably the most exciting recent announcement has been the extension of the Army software factory in Austin, Texas. So we have a piloted footprint down there where the Marines are showcasing talent, but they're also learning. And we're also, piloting just what my colleague just mentioned. How can you take advantage of an infrastructure as a code and a platform that's not sitting within your own data center and your own infrastructure that you now have to also secure? You also have to protect the data. If it's containerized, that's a whole nother set of protection. So we're really proud of our ability to pilot this program with the Army. And the reason we chose to partner with the Army, because I got that question at one of my recent events, and I want to make sure I address it, making sure that we can take advantage of joint talented resources instead of being an individual. Marine Corps loves to be, ready and first in, but we also look for those opportunities where we can collaborate with each other across the service and across the government. What that does is not only build a collaborative space to learn from each other, which is always great, people, but there's also a fiscal concession that you achieve. That return of investment across the government allows us not to make duplicated efforts in investments. And then it allows me to work with the programs and resource management team and find other things that may be below the cut line of our budget and start to invest in some of those. So the fiscal investments is also something that I think is a great benefit. It also helps us with training. We have this MOS, the application developers. MOS is 0673 for everyone out there that's interested in coming into the Marine Corps for that. That
like
formalizes
a little recruiting angle there.
Yes. Can't miss the opportunity to acquire some great talent.
Absolutely.
And so we take this and we look at that and say, okay, how do we make this also about talent management and training as well? So you get the human resources initiative, but we can also standardize training, listening to Mr. Giuliano talk about how do you standardize those controls? Well, if you can standardize controls and you can standardize a few environments, then you can standardize training and reaching the talent gap that we have right now in cybersecurity. Training is probably going to be a better way to approach it versus, keeping things very customized and very special to, people like the Marine Corps, the Army, Navy, whomever. And then we also had this existing capability called McBoss that everyone hears about. And so the software factory was a chance to consolidate all the things we had learned in the past, find ways to take a standardized approach, help with the training, and also demonstrate how we can also manage talent and find opportunities to recruit, as well as those lessons learned from what everyone else has learned.
I love the partnership with the Army there. And one-offs are expensive. And anytime you can sort of stretch those dollars out and bring in more capability for the warfighter, all the better, right? John, how about at NetApp? Do you want to give us a specific example, specific program that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, Luke, I would. It's so interesting hearing common themes coming from the panelists. We're talking about, moving further up the stack, the complexity of hybrid multi-clouds, and all of the complexity that comes with those areas. The thing that we like to focus on is a challenge in these hybrid multi-cloud environments and being able to operate within not only on-prem, but the multi-cloud environments is data and the very information that these applications and tool sets operate on. Data has gravity, data has mass. So an example that I love to use, Luke, is we've had customers, and Renata talked about being able to leverage analytics, machine learning, big data analytics, right? Again, that capability operates on large amounts of data. We're able to work with some of our agencies in helping them to port subsets of that data from their on-prem data centers to cloud data centers where they can take advantage of ready-built machine learning algorithms, ready-built compute and GPU access in those cloud environments to explore and discover and do some initial training, do some initial proof of concepts on different machine learning algorithms. Once those things are proven out, they can then bring those training sets and those models back on-prem to then continue to train on the large amounts of data that it takes to train and test on those models. So we're seeing that as a definite use case for our public sector agencies.
Very important element of this entire ecosystem. Paula, so many important missions with the diplomatic corps. There's a lot of stuff going on across the globe these days. Give us an example of a program that you'd like to highlight where you're enabling some capability there.
Sure. So for us at the State Department, a lot of our customers live and work overseas in every country. And, some of those countries have great bandwidth and some not so much. And so for us, cloud capabilities have been instrumental in providing communication in a crisis. So for an example from State Department, our customers in Ukraine use Google Workspace, and they use that to securely and reliably collaborate with partners inside and outside of our government.
I know that's a very important element of, again, the diplomatic corps and fast response. And there's a lot of these activities across the various parts of the globe that are in very sparse areas there, and not a lot of high bandwidth, very primitive environments. And certainly the cloud situation enables a lot of capability there. So really do appreciate everything that you're doing over there at the State Department. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about secure cloud computing. We were talking about specific examples. Ben, would you like to give us a specific example from the Red Hat perspective?
Yeah. John from NetApp brought up data gravity, and kind of like physics in general, like gravity only really matters in relation to time. And so like data gravity matters if you care about how long it takes to get the data and create an actual inference. So for instance, if you're doing research against a full data set, the data gravity doesn't matter. You have time to wait for that data to arrive. If you need immediate insight, then data gravity absolutely matters. And you need to be able to bring your, let's say it's a machine learning model. It needs to be as close to the data as possible. And this goes back to the earlier point about edge computing, right? This is how do I take a model from a cloud environment, deliver it to a server that is maybe in the Ukraine or maybe in Sudan and so on.
Maybe on a space station.
Maybe on a space station. And the best example I can give right now is we just participated in Mission Daybreak at the VA. This was a $20 million grand challenge to reduce veteran suicides. We were finalists. We actually ended up winning an award for that. And essentially, we developed machine learning models that can run next to patient data, consuming social determinants of health data from across the entire country, combine those sets of data to actually produce a risk score for a patient when they're actually in a patient encounter with a clinician. The clinician can actually have knowledge that this patient has a high risk for suicide ideation and respond appropriately. And that brings me back to my point about time, right, and latency. In that case, you need low latency, right? You need to know now. You can't wait a day or 6 months or whatever. And the fact that you know is only possible because the machine learning model has been deployed alongside the existing electronic health record and is able to communicate with it. And some of the technologies that Kendall is championing and building allowed for that to happen. So, the more we kind of embrace the modern cloud architectures and edge computing in general, the more we can bring those types of capabilities out to remote locations, into hospitals, into clinics, into war zones, whatever it might be.
And doing some very important stuff. And we really appreciate, Ben, what you and Kendall are doing to help those veterans out. Touching story there and super important. We're going to switch to priorities. We're going to do a little turbo around here. Top 2 priorities, Renata, for you on cloud computing this year.
Our top 2 priorities is the zero trust strategy and people, standardizing the training, the recruitment, but the strategic approach of zero trust, a word that continues to be used and could potentially feel diluted. That's the area, managing identities, taking advantage of analytics to be a little bit more proactive and predictive from behaviors versus waiting until something occurs and having to respond.
Yeah, the zero trust really helps in regards to this sort of chaotic environment that we're in with the multi-cloud, et cetera, and really sort of lays a framework down and architecture, of course, but it's still complicated, right? And things like identity management, a very important pillar to that zero trust environment. Paula, top two priorities for you there as you're on your journey.
Yeah, so one of them is data sharing. So we really want to expand our enterprise data analytics platform so that we're sharing data across agencies. We're not able to do that today. And so that's something that we really want to work on. And then the other piece for us is expanding our low code, no code platforms in the field. So enabling citizen development and getting those little tiny apps that are on SQL servers in embassies. We really want to make those whole and secure and into the enterprise fold.
Yeah, what a nice, clean way to do that. Sort of take it from underneath the desk, if you will. I think those were your words, and bringing it into a platform that's got some guardrails on it and also has a lot of flexibility and capability for those citizens or those diplomatic services or diplomatic, what are we going to call them? Diplomatic coders, I guess, something like that, right? To be able to develop those capabilities in those very remote areas and do some very important things. No question about that. How about over at the VA, Kendall? Top two priorities for you this year?
Yeah, a few words in my first one, but enterprise health optimization, which is really where I see the security play. And part of that also is our infrastructure teams working with the application teams on health assessments, as well as getting health scorecards up that really help the teams understand how they're leveraging their infrastructure in the cloud today. I think related.
So when you say health, you're talking about health of the environment, not health of the veteran.
Right, health of the environment, and make sure, back to some of what's been said earlier too, that we're using those taxpayer dollars wisely, so that we're investing where we need to. I can do more if I'm more efficient, right? So helping our application partners pull that off and do it in a safe, secure way. And then the second piece, very closely related to me, is the FinOps piece. And that's really looking at our spend in the cloud and making sure that we're being extremely wise in our stewardship of taxpayer dollars, and understanding how we can improve our services while also being more efficient at the same time. So our goal is to build better, safer, faster, and really bringing the infrastructure teams to the table to help deliver there.
Love it. All right, we're going into turbo round. Top priority, Joe, for Palo Alto Networks this year.
Top priority for us this year, we're really focusing on our zero trust message as well. Probably number one. We saw that with our recent announcement on a win with DISA with Thunderdome. Really excited about that. We have all the capability to provide a prescription for our customers to help understand how to take advantage of zero trust. And zero trust is a conversation that spans not just with cloud computing, but all the way through to of course, to network access, on-prem and edge. We have that capability. Instead of talking about just products, let's talk about capabilities and end user mission. And we have that. So we're transitioning to really get our message more in line to help our customers understand how our capabilities can really help with that. So
I love the idea of not talking about products and talking about capability. I think that's awesome.
It's tough.
John, top.
Yeah.
Absolutely. John, top priority for NetApp.
Top priority, cyber resiliency. You've heard references to zero trust. We're a foremost leader in data protection, data security. We all know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when something bad happens. What we're going to focus on is helping agencies to be cyber resilient, to be able to recover from anything that may happen. That's the focus.
And a very good focus. It's all about the response.
Exactly.
Ben, top priority for Red Hat this year.
I have to agree with Joe. It's zero trust. And similarly, there's no single product for zero trust. It's
an architecture.
It's an architecture. It's an approach. and you have to lean into the concepts, right? Like you have to understand what least privilege means. A lot of the existing networking has to change. We need to be able to lock down east-west traffic inside a network, and that requires investment and understanding. Thankfully, I would say most modern cloud native applications, cloud native products, whatever that might be, already conform to zero trust for the most part. They just have to be set up properly. So this isn't really a matter of like going and buying the zero trust product. And I kid you not, I have had agencies approach me and ask, "What is your zero trust product?" And I just had to say back, like, there is no such thing, right? Like, we need to talk about how you have set things up, how your contractors have built out the network, how the applications are being hosted. I think we certainly have a vision for that. And it's more about helping agencies understand the steps they need to take, the baby steps to the walk and the running and the rest, to actually get to a zero trust future, which is definitely going to be a requirement in the next 2 years.
Sure, and it's a journey for the entire ecosystem, and we really appreciate what you're doing to help those agencies along. Well, we're going to wrap it up with a question that we always like to end with, and that's sort of painting a picture of the future, 2 to 3 years out. What's it going to look like? Ben, over at Red Hat, again, you have the perspective of looking across the ecosystem. You see a lot of different things. You're doing stuff in the Petri dish, et cetera. What's it going to look like 2 to 3 years from where you all stand? What's the demand signal out there right now?
Automation. Straight up. Like all the security we've been talking about here, the ability to use IT automation to manage the controls across all those environments, everyone's data centers that we were talking about, being able to update those controls automatically, being able to audit those controls on a dime. That's what automation lets you do. And I think as we start to really move into the multi-cloud and space and hybrid cloud, automation becomes more and more relevant and important. And then there's, going up the stack a bit, there's the automation that comes behind large language models and the automation that comes from machine learning. And as those things begin to maybe step in to do some of the predictive, security controls, or even using AI to try to penetrate your own network, those sorts of automation steps are going to really become an important part of the tool set to create a secure environment.
Yeah, automation with a little sprinkle of AI behind it. Fantastic. We certainly look forward to that. John, how about a NetApp? What's it going to look like 2 to 3 years from now?
Yeah, the future for us is something we like to reference as data fluidity. Working with agencies to be able to, you heard Paula talk about unlocking some of the massive amounts of data that public sector agencies hold that are locked away in silos, right? The ability to be able to help them unlock and position and push out, data. We like to reference edge, core, cloud, right? Access to data when and where an end user or application needs that. So data fluidity is the future for us.
Fantastic. And we certainly look forward to that. Joe, how about at Palo Alto Networks?
Thanks,
2
Luke.
years from now, what are we seeing?
3 to 5 years from now, we believe that we're on the cusp of a security convergence that's happening. There is a massive amount of capability, too many point products and tool sets, too confusing, the proliferation of multi-cloud, the complexity of the shared responsibility model, working with the CSPs. You're going to see a simplification. You're going to see a capability convergence that is going to help our customers maximize capability, better security posture, also save on operational costs and training. It's ready. It's ready to happen, and it's already starting to happen. It has to happen. There's too much complexity. and it leads to just overall bad security. So that's what we believe is happening, and it's going to continue to happen.
Well, I'm sure that Kendall and Paula and Renata are certainly welcome that emergence. Kendall, 2 to 3 years from now, you all are doing such important stuff. I think about all the remote telework or telemedicine that's going on over at the VA, offering to the veterans, et cetera. 2 to 3 years from now, you've been on your journey. What does it look like at that point?
Yeah, so I think one of the key things we've done over the last year and a half or so is when we initially built the cloud team, it was a focused unit that we created to help show the art of the possible. As we talked about earlier, we're past that today. We are now a multi-cloud hybrid state. And so we brought our on-prem and our cloud teams, our VA Platform One teams together inside one unit. And what I see them already becoming, but I think we're going to see even more of this, is sometimes, infrastructure, we're kind of the engine builders in the back. But where I see our teams going is we're really becoming the Formula One car designers with the teams out there. We're helping solve these problems. And I see more and more of our infrastructure teams leaning into the creative solutions that, Ben and others we've been talking about today to solve those problems. But I see them doing that as more of one unit than ever before, not as, compartmentalized technology domain, but really, fusion teams that show up as partners to help design that F1 car.
And that's a fantastic aspiration to look at, and we look forward to seeing that. Paula, if I'm a freshly minted diplomat coming out of the Foreign Service Institute and I'm issued a black passport, am I going to also be issued a Chromebook and then told to go do good things, or what happens 2 to 3 years from now?
Yeah, we sure hope so. We hope our Tech for Life takes off and works in 2 to 3 years.
Tech for Life, what's that?
So Tech for Life is right now our foreign affairs officers, when they travel from one embassy to another, they actually have to turn in their equipment and then get new equipment when they go to the next embassy or post. And so we're hoping with our Tech for Life campaign that they can then keep all of their equipment as they move from post to post or embassy to embassy. But really, one of the big challenges we have at State Department is our use of non-enterprise networks. And so our CIO is really enforcing us to look at ways to reduce those networks. And so we plan to leverage Google because of their FedRAMP approved OCONUS regions to really allow state to catalyze its support of overseas posts who need cloud solutions and improve their mission environments by allowing data transport and network blockers coming back to the United States, instead being able to leverage, OCONUS regions that Google provides.
Nice. I love it. It sounds fantastic. And we really look forward to that. Renata, what's it going to look like 2 to 3 years when somebody comes out of boot camp? They've learned how to use a rifle, right? Every Marine Corps person learns how to use a rifle. Are you going to issue them a laptop and say, go do good things? Or how is that going to work? What's it going to look like 2 to 3 years?
Absolutely. So like you said, every Marine gets a rifle. Well, every Marine is going to have, an O365 environment that's on the SIPRNet in 2 to 3 years. I'm going to speak that into existence. You have to have that. What the Marine Corps needs is, after training and coming out of boot camp, they're not coming into an unclassified environment when it's war fighting. So we have to, have that data, like you've heard throughout today's presentation, at the ready, closest to, the application and for utilization when you need it. And so can't be reaching back to the United States in an unclassified environment and call that war fighting. So that's what our 2 to 3 years is going to look like. And that means standardized operations for training, making sure that we're acquiring the right talent and training both our Marine active duty personnel as well as our civilians that are supporting. And we can't forget about our contractual personnel. You just heard Ms. Wagner talk about information sharing earlier, and that's going to be so critical. Looking at open source everything helps us standardize and kind of know as we're reading the RFIs and RFPs and awarding, contractual support, we know what to expect because we're all collaborating with each other and we're not keeping things in a silo. So the formal schooling, the training, the prototyping, the education, as well as the technical pieces. In 2 to 3 years, you're gonna hear about a Marine going aboard a naval ship and being able to use an IL6 environment for O365.
Love it. Well, I want to thank all of you for taking your time out of the busy schedules to join us for this program and everything that all of you are doing to fight the good fight to keep this country safe and let us all prosper. And I'd like to thank our sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in every single month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.